In Mexico, 8 states remain on alert following the arrival of Hurricane Roslyn, which made landfall this Sunday off the coast of the state of Nayarit. In Russia, a military aircraft crashed and hit a residential building in the city of Irkutsk. And Iran launches large-scale military drill to strengthen the nation's defense capabilities. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. This Sunday morning, Hurricane Roslyn reached the north-central coastal region of continental Mexico, coming from the Pacific. A total of 323 municipalities and 8 states are on alert, according to the latest update from the National Hurricane Center. Roslyn landfell in west-central Mexico in northern Nayarit on Sunday morning as a strong Category 3 hurricane with sustained winds of 193 km per hour. Roslyn is forecast to weaken rapidly as it moves inland over the mountainous western Mexican terrain. The storm surge is also expected to cause significant flooding. The market town of Kuseri in the far north province of Cameroon, close to the border with Chad, has been struggling with major floods for a week. 2 regional rivers have their confluence there, the Lagoon and Chari, and both are seeing exceptionally high water levels that are predicted to rise further. Sandbags were being used in an attempt to contain the rivers, but for many parts of Kuseri, it was already too late. Homes in the town have been flooded, and people were seen walking through knee-high muddy water carrying possessions to try and save them from the floods. Families have been left homeless and have built temporary shelters from sticks and sheets on dry, higher ground. The Lagoon and Chari rivers separate Cameroon from neighboring Chad, which declared a state of emergency this week to help tackle the crisis.
I'm in a serious trouble. My house is flooded. The family has nearly all left. Things have been removed to a safe place in town. The town of Kuseri and the district of the same name has been confronted for a little over a week by the flooding of the Lagoon and Chari rivers.
The UN warned that over 1.5 million children are at risk as a result of the floods affecting the country. According to reports, over 600 people have died following the effects of the rains. They point out that almost 3 million citizens have been affected and 60% are minors, while over 1.3 million Nigerians have been displaced. In this context, the floods also damaged agricultural production, causing food insecurity in the country.
Know that everywhere is hard. We are suffering in this place. Mosquitoes bite us every night. We don't used to sleep. The government should help us.
Flood came to my house, which you don't know, to come unaware. So before we know that water got into my house, water flow everywhere. We wake up, I told my wife, woman, get us water. Water don't here. We couldn't see any person again, all my children. I have 6 boys and 10 girls.
Just over a week before the second round of elections to define who will be the next president of Brazil, Lula Silva met with supporters in Ribeirão das Naves, Belo Horizonte metropolitan area. As has become customary in the last stage of the campaign, Lula toured the streets among a crowd riding on the back of a truck with Senator Simon Tebet, one of his opponents in the first round of the elections, and federal deputy Marina Silva. After the tour, the former president of Brazil said that in case of winning the elections next October 30th, he will set up a more representative government of Brazilian society, in which there will be a larger participation of women, blacks and indigenous. Also, the candidate said on Saturday that the next presidential elections are to choose between barbarism and democracy.
On the 30th of October, the people will have to choose between fascism and democracy. It's not only between Lula and Bolsonaro. It is between barbarism and democracy, between fascism and democracy, between inhumanity and humanity. This is what we will have to choose, and the day to decide is coming.
Meanwhile, current president and candidate for re-election Jair Bolsonaro chose the outskirts of Sao Paulo to be present during these Saturdays. Bolsonaro visited the town of Guarulhos together with his former minister and now candidate for governor of Sao Paulo, Tarcísio de Freitas. Bolsonaro has been campaigning in Brazil's largest city since Thursday, hoping to narrow the over 650,000 vote gap between him and Lula in Brazil's most populous state. The Conservative leader criticized during the day the most recent decision of the highest electoral court that prohibited some media from naming Lula as thief, unconvicted, or head of a criminal organization. In Costa Rica, a small plane crashed off the Caribbean coast in the province of Limon. Authorities report the rescue of 2 dead bodies. Rescue teams found the bodies of 2 people who were traveling on the plane on a flight from Mexico. The victims are an adult and a minor who were part of the 6 people on board, 5 German passengers and a Swiss pilot. Reports indicate that the jet coming from Mexico to Limon Airport was owned by a 53-year-old German businessman who was traveling with his partner and children. An emergency protocol involving the National Coast Guard and the Air Surveillance Service was activated for the rescue of the victims. Security Minister Jorge Torres gave an assessment of the situation and reported the continuity of the search efforts.
We want to report that around 6 p.m. we received an alert about an aircraft of a private flight from Mexico to the airport of El Limón. This aircraft was traveling with 5 passengers of German nationality. The aircraft lost communication with the control tower near the bar of Parismina in the Costa Rican Caribbean, and immediately we activate the internal protocol with both the National Coast Guard and the Air Surveillance Service. And because of the hours and bad weather, we had to suspend and will resume the search first thing tomorrow at 5 a.m. to rule out any indication and accident.
Let's take a short break, but first remember you can now follow us on TikTok at the account at teleSUR English, in which you'll be able to see news in different formats, news updates and much more. Other stories coming up, stay with us. Welcome back from the south. In Russia, a Sukhoi 30 military aircraft crashed this Sunday during a test flight into a residential building in the city of Irkutsk. The 2 crew members of the aircraft are dead. The aircraft belonged to an airline company and was carrying out a test without ammunition. The Russian investigating committee has opened a criminal case under an article on the violation of safety standards. As part of the procedure, a commission has been set up including experts from aerospace industry companies and specialized institutes. This event comes after another Su-34 military aircraft crashed this Monday in a residential area of the Russian city of Yeisk. Russia's Ministry of Defense denounces once more that Ukraine continues to fire at areas surrounding the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, threatening to create a man-made nuclear disaster.
The Kiev regime continues provocations in order to create a threat of a man-made disaster at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. During the day, the artillery of the armed forces of Ukraine fired more than 30 artillery shells on the eastern outskirts of the city of Energodar and the territory adjacent to the nuclear power plant. The strikes were carried out from the Ukrainian-controlled areas of the settlements of Nikopol and Chernorovyoska in the Dnipropetrovsk region. The enemy's firepower was suppressed by return fire from Russian artillery units.
In Italy, ultra-conservative Giorgia Meloni took office this Sunday as Prime Minister of the country after winning the September 25th elections. Meloni was inaugurated in a ceremony at the Palace of Chigi, seat of the executive, and became the first woman to lead the Italian government. Meloni won in an early election after the outgoing Prime Minister lost the backing of his coalition and was forced to resign. Meloni will head, together with President Sergio Mattarella, the most right-wing government in Italy since 1946, and among her main challenges is the management of the economy in the midst of the energy crisis and a public debt of 150% of the gross domestic product. In Germany, citizens demonstrated in different parts of the country in rejection of the policies imposed by the government in the face of the energy crisis. Groups of citizens mobilized in the cities of Dresden, Frankfurt, Hanover, and other localities in a protest called Solidarity in the Face of the Crisis, Creating Social Security and Independence on Fossil Fuels, in which activists demanded a secure, social, and sustainable future. Local media reports that the European Union and United States sanctions against Russia continue to wreak havoc on the region's economies. Western Europe is also facing a wave of protests in different cities over the high cost of living. and Brussels policies, where demonstrators expressed their discontent over the threat of the energy crisis and inflation.
I wanted to be there to defend all those who suffer social injustice. The elderly are often forgotten in this energy issue, and salaries are not up to par. In the city, you have to worry about whether people can still afford their housing. I don't agree with the fact that everything has been destroyed for years and that people now have to pay the price. Politics is simply doing too little and cashing in on its own. I am totally against this.
Thousands of people gathered in Brussels for a Walk for Your Future climate march ahead of the COP27 UN Climate Change Conference next month.
We demand as young people real action from the different governments for the planet, because it is our future that they are sabotaging and crushing because they want to make profit and they don't see it in long term. They only see the money they can make in the short term. What we want is real measures which begin to constrain the companies that do the most damage to the planet and that we save our future.
And I think people need to realize, especially the politics also, that we are already in a major crisis, and this crisis is as serious or more serious than all the things we faced before in our lifetimes or anybody before us. So that's what the message should be today.
On Sunday, crews aboard a humanitarian rescue ship rescued 38 people from a small fiberglass boat adrift in the Mediterranean. According to the operators of the mission, several children and one woman were among those rescued by teams aboard the SOS Mediterranean-operated ocean Viking vessel. The rescue ship now has 73 migrants on board. Nearly 300 migrants disembarked in the southern Italian port of Taranto on Saturday after their rescue at sea in 5 different operations by the crew of a humanitarian vessel operated by Doctors Without Borders. About half of the 293 rescued passengers on the Geo Barents were unaccompanied minors. In a separate operation earlier Saturday, the Ocean Viking saved about 35 migrants, including 3 children, in international waters of Malta. Most of these migrants see their asylum bids fail because they are fleeing poverty, not war or persecution. Members of the Standing Committee of the Political Bureau of the Communist Party of China met with the foreign press on Sunday, October 23rd, on the day Xi Jinping assumed the leadership of the party's top executive body for the 3rd consecutive time. During a press conference at the Great People's Palace in Beijing, Chinese President and Communist Party General Secretary Xi Jinping presented the 4 new members of the Politburo Standing Committee, a body that constitutes the top leadership of the formation. In addition to Xi and Zhao Leji and Wang Honing, who remain on the body, the new members are Li Qiang, Kai Qi, Ding Xuaqian, and Li Xi. In his speech, Xi Jinping insisted on the message that China needs the development of the world, just as the world depends on the growth of the Asian giant's economy.
China cannot develop without the world, and the world also needs China for its development. After more than 40 years of unflagging efforts toward reform and opening up, we have created 2 miracles: rapid economic development and long-term social stability. The Chinese economy has great resilience, potential, and latitude. It's strong fundamentals with no change, and it will remain on the positive trajectory over the long run. China will open its doors ever wider. We will be steadfast in deepening reform and opening up and on pursuing high-quality development.
More news coming up after a final short break, so don't go away. Welcome back from the south. In Iran, the Armored Ground Force has launched a 3-day large-scale military drill involving combat forces in a border area in the country's western Azerbaijan province. The 3-day exercise, codenamed Battalion Role Model, began Saturday in Pashvek district in Piranshar County to assess the combat power of the forces and show off their military capabilities. The forces are expected to conduct heli-borne parachute operations, night raids, helicopter combat, road control, high-altitude capture, and offensive destruction and urban warfare during the drill, involving various units drawn from the Army's infantry, armored artillery, Army aviation, drone, engineering, airborne, and electronic warfare divisions. In Lebanon, the World Health Organization delivered a second batch of aid to address the cholera outbreak in the country. The representative of the organization in Lebanon, Abdi Nasir Abu Bakr, stressed that delivering the kits with medicines and supplies will reinforce the management and treatment of patients. WHO reiterated its commitment to improve coordination and emergency readiness. Lebanon has 227 people infected and 7 dead in the outbreak, spread to at least 29 communities. Abu Bakr insisted that cholera is easily preventable if people have access to clean water, adequate hygiene facilities, and accurate information. In Palestine, Israeli occupation forces opened live fire and fired tear gas canisters at farmers attending land near the border fence south of the Gaza Strip. According to local media reports, the incident took place in the Irkutsk area east of Khan Yunis. Gaza border farmers were attacked by Israeli occupation forces stationed at a military watchtower along the southern border with Gaza, being forced to stop the work on their lands and leave the area. The attacks by the Israeli army against farmers along the Gaza border have become almost routine. This is intended to prevent the development of cultivation of the lands near the border fence. Israeli tanks and armored vehicles often cross the border and carry out systematic destruction of the land near the border. On Saturday, a great festival for Cuban culture was celebrated at the Cuban Embassy in Mexico. The event was carried out with activities such as dance, cinema, gastronomy, music, painting, and photography. Around 30 paintings and photographs by contemporary Cuban artists were displayed in the lobby of the diplomatic building in Mexico City. October 20th is celebrated every year as Cuban Culture Day because the march that would become Cuba's national anthem, composed by the poet Perucho Figueredo amid the war struggle for the independence of the largest of the Antilles, was intoned on that date for the first time. It happened in 1868 after the victory of the nascent Bambi army under the command of the lawyer Carlos Manuel de Céspedes in the capture of the city of Bayamo.
We are very happy to have had so many people who have wanted to come to our embassy today, both Mexican friends and a large number of Cubans who live here in Mexico, who are our compatriots and have come to join us. I believe that October 20th, the Day of Cuban Culture, is a very important date for Cuba, because it is the moment when for the first time our national anthem was sung. The anthem of the homeland was composed at that moment.
Thousands of dancers took to the streets of La Paz on Saturday to celebrate the annual University Folkloric Entrance, a traditional folkloric fair held every year in the Bolivian capital. The university entrance summoned in this opportunity 62 fraternities, dance groups that prepared themselves during the whole year for this type of outings. The 33rd edition of the event has its chosen theme, the fight against violence against women, with the aim of prevention through personnel who sensitized and oriented the population. The parade took to the streets again after being suspended for 2 consecutive years due to the pandemic.
After 2 years, we are finally coming back, returning to our traditions. This is the 33rd entry of the Higher University of San Andres.
Here, everything that is folklore, our heritage, is revalued. Thank God we have come through the pandemic of COVID-19. We continue with our culture and our beloved University Folkloric Entrance.
We have come to the end of this news briefing. You can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For telesur English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.